I was doing some research recently to see what people across the country and in my area locally are actually searching for when it comes to health. I expected for things like wellness, prevention, health habits, but that is not what people are searching for. People are searching for things like high blood pressure, chronic fatigue, anxiety, poor sleep, and weight gain. In other words, most people don't start thinking about health until something feels wrong. Stick around for the episode. Welcome to the Human Condition Podcast with Coach Jones, where I help people make sustainable behavior changes for their holistic health and wellness based on science and not necessarily on what is popular or trending on the internet. Today's episode is going to be audio only. I'm just toying with the option to see, how it works for me and what it does for other people, because I don't watch podcasts, I listen to them. So why would the expectation be that other people are watching my podcast? Plus, it might save me some time with editing and that sort of thing. So we're just going to see what happens. Also, for a fun reality check when it comes to podcasting in your own home, I'm going to call this episode 2 or episode 3.5 because I have already recorded this episode, and my bad for not checking my equipment, but after I recorded it, I realized that my toddler had turned the echo up on my microphone all the way. So the whole thing sounded like I was talking in a cave. So here we are re-recording the episode, but it's no big deal. It's not a long one. Anyway, to the main point of the episode. So I was recently doing some research for the business. I'm using Google Trends. I'm trying to find what people are searching for. And initially I started looking around in my local area. I found that people aren't searching much when it comes to health and wellness locally. So I, expanded it to the state, the whole United States, because I'm really trying to make sure that my messaging and my content is pointed towards what people actually are looking for and what they need to read. And what I'm finding is, or what I have found in this research, is that there's very little interest in searching for things like prevention, wellness, lifestyle medicine. And I tried, I combined the word prevention with other things like how to prevent heart attacks or type 2 diabetes or looking for wellness or whatever. And what I'm noticing is there's little to no interest in searches for that. But there is a higher search volume for things like symptoms and conditions like fatigue, sleep problems, anxiety, weight gain, weight loss, high blood pressure. So most people don't start thinking about their health until something feels wrong. What it makes me realize is that prevention is kind of largely invisible, or it seems a little abstract for people to be looking for those things. But what it does is it creates this opportunity that we have here as health and wellness professionals to educate early and bring awareness to stuff like this. So why does it happen? Like, why are we finding that this is a thing, or why am I finding this is a thing? And there's kind of like 3 psychological truths that we can talk about here. And one is that humans solve problems and not hypotheticals. We react to discomfort and threats, things that we can see and feel and hear. They're tangible. They're right in front of us. We can notice them pretty quickly. And then the flip side of that is if nothing hurts, we just assume that everything is fine. So if we can't feel that something is wrong, we just assume that it's not wrong. And unfortunately, that's not the way that it works when it comes to these lifestyle-related diseases and conditions. They're kind of these slow boils that happen over time. So the next thing is prevention is invisible. So you don't feel stable blood sugar. You don't feel balanced hormones or a well-regulated nervous system. Your healthy systems, your regulated systems, don't usually send loud signals. What sends loud signals is when something is wrong. That's when you start noticing that things feel a little bit off. The third psychological truth here is that our culture is reactive. So we are very reactive. We're not proactive, we're reactive. So health is kind of treated like a mechanic shop or a car repair shop. Fix it when it breaks. We treat our health like it's car maintenance that we forgot to schedule. You forget to schedule your oil change and then your engine blows up. People schedule doctor's visits when they're feeling the symptoms of things. They don't really schedule it for maintenance. And I know a lot of doctors' offices have annual health checkups, but I have my own qualms when it comes to the healthcare industry as it stands right now. And I've talked about it in previous episodes. I don't want to harp on it too much in this episode, but There are problems with patient loads, the amount of times that doctors get to spend with patients, differences in the way that doctors treat their patients. And also, if we're talking about things like the social determinants of health, people's access to healthcare in general. But anyway, the thing that we have to recognize is that like the absence of pain or symptoms does not mean that we're operating optimally. It just means that we're not at a point where it's loud enough yet that we have to notice it. And I really want to shine some light on this. I want to make sure that I'm making a clear point. Not everybody is unhealthy and not everything means something, but given the statistics of things like lifestyle related diseases and conditions, type 2 diabetes, metabolic conditions, overweight, obesity, heart disease, all of these things are so high and so prevalent, at least in the United States, because I'll admit I haven't done my research globally. One has to wonder whether or not, there's something going on under the hood, if we're keeping with the car repair shop reference here. So there's kind of this small but growing trend of people that are starting to notice these like foundational signals, even if they're not searching for prevention. What they're searching for is things like sleep problems, or chronic stress was a really high one, anxiety, super high one, high blood pressure, changes in weight. They're starting to ask the questions like, why am I tired? Why do I feel anxious? What is my blood pressure telling me? What are good blood pressure numbers? So people are starting to kind of be curious about symptoms related to their health, whether or not they're experiencing these conditions or not. But like the fact that people might not be searching for prevention, but they're starting to explore what leads to problems is pretty promising. A lot of times let me preface this by saying I was searching, I think I was using Gemini or something, one of the AI platforms. I looked up like what are people in my local area searching related to health and wellness. The information is really helpful for me. And what I found was that one of the most highly trending searches, some of the most highly trending searches are things like wearable tech, like your Fitbit, your Garmin, Oura Ring, things like that. And then also using AI to assist in health tracking. So technology is giving people kind of like early feedback on their bodies. When they're able to purchase and use these wearable technologies, they're able to start noticing things more. These things track things like HRV, their sleep tracking, sleep scores, steps, activity level. There's also some technology that does blood glucose. I mean, obviously you have your blood glucose monitors, but there's these things called CGMs, which is continuous glucose monitoring, which are not like widely available to people. You kind of have to have a pre-existing condition in order to qualify for it for your insurance company. Otherwise, it's very expensive. And like I said, not widely available. I do think that there is some benefit in doing continuous glucose monitoring at least once or twice a year, just to make sure that what you're eating isn't impacting you too greatly when it comes to glucose and insulin levels. But I digress. That's a whole other topic there. But here's the thing. So it's like you're giving people these insights into their health before their symptoms, or if they already have these symptoms, they're starting to be able to draw parallels between the things that they're doing in their day-to-day lives and how it's changing the data that they're seeing. So it's allowing people to like be present with themselves and kind of notice these things. But seeing the data doesn't always tell you what to do next. It's kind of fuzzy. And even if, these platforms offer you kind of like related articles or things that you should read or practices that you should engage in, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right answer for you. And it also doesn't necessarily mean that it shines any more clarity on what it is that you're reading. You could have a low HRV, you could have poor sleep scores, or you could have, you're spending enough time asleep, but like you always feel fatigued in the morning and you don't know why. But it leaves people kind of uncertain about how to act on the data that they're getting. And so knowing something is off doesn't always tell you what to do about it. And that's where kind of like coaching and education and guidance comes in. So, there is a way here in which coaches can help you kind of discern the data that you're looking at and figure out how to put that into practice in your life. What that really leads me into is kind of all of this stuff was a little shocking to me when it came to the research. And it really is just because like I kind of live in this space and I need to be self-aware enough to understand that. I read the books, I do the research, I try to like draw conclusions about health and figuring out how to create these systems that are really going to help clients lead to these long-term sustainable health changes. But being in that space doesn't mean that other people are also in this space and reading the same things that I'm reading. And so we don't know what we don't know is kind of like a thing that I need to apply to how I'm approaching how my information is coming out. So like health is complex, very, very complex and extremely interconnected. I am both in awe and fascinated and also a little overwhelmed and scared when it comes to realizing the amount of things that play into our overall health and wellness, like how connected these systems are and how each thing can impact another thing in a way that we might not recognize, because symptoms become very, very hard to pinpoint when everything is off in the rest of your life. So like stress affects our ability to sleep, or stress affects our ability to cope with more stress. Sleep can affect blood pressure. Stress can affect your weight gain, weight loss ability, or your gaining weight could affect your blood sugar. Poor sleep affects mental health and anxiety. It's all connected. And we're not even scratching the surface here with the examples that I've used, because I'm in deep there when it comes to sleep, stress, and recovery. The whole purpose of this season is to cover sleep, stress, and recovery and things like that. They're foundational for health. But many people aren't taught how the body works as a whole system. We learn about different systems when we're in high school. Like here's your digestive system and your cardiovascular system, but like they play off of each other. Everything plays off of each other. And like one interesting fact that I've said in previous episodes is that there's not a single system in the body that sleep does not impact. And I would also say the same is probably true when it comes to stress. Stress impacts a lot, but health and wellness professionals kind of need to be a little bit louder about educating people. We have to help people understand these patterns and these early signals before symptoms become like too urgent. And if these symptoms are already present, if these people are already impacted by these lifestyle related diseases and conditions, we have to educate them on the best ways that lifestyle changes can help mitigate these things. I don't want to say, it's not going to solve it completely, because there's sometimes when a condition becomes so severe or it's prolonged for so long that certain types of systemic damage have occurred that are irreversible. But the only thing that improving your lifestyle is going to do is help you manage these things. So why does this matter? If people are searching for symptoms, that's kind of the opportunity there. Like we can put out education that bridges the gap between awareness and action. Foundational behaviors like sleep and stress management, movement or physical activity, recovery, they're still the most upstream. They're still the most effective upstream interventions. When I say upstream, I mean like downstream is when you're at the doctor's office and you're talking to them about the symptoms. Upstream is like before we even get to that point. If you can change your lifestyle to be as healthy as possible in the parameters of what's real for you, like your reality, then by the time you get to the doctor, they'll have more data to go off of than just the symptoms that you're saying. Because I've noticed with people that I know particularly, when they go to the doctor with these symptoms, oftentimes what's recommended to them are things like lifestyle changes before they get into things like diagnostic testing and pharmacological interventions. And it's easier to go to the doctor and tell them, I'm living a very healthy lifestyle, but I'm still experiencing this, because then at that point, they can't tell you to just go away and come back when you fix things, because you already did. Again, I'm not trying to knock on healthcare. It's just the way that the system is, and the time that doctors have to spend with patients is very limited. And so I want to say far and wide, they are trying to do their best with what they've been handed. And that's just me being optimistic here. But yeah, as health and wellness professionals, we need to get loud about this education, and we need to like really inject it into public health spaces, trying to figure out ways to work with healthcare professionals in order to kind of alleviate some of that time needed to educate clients. There's a lot of, we have fitness professionals, health coaches, nutrition coaches, all of these things. Doctors and people, in the medical space are limited. I feel like there's a need here that we can fulfill. When it comes to foundational behaviors too, There's kind of like the other thing that we're battling. And whether that is a healthcare professional recommending lifestyle changes to somebody or as a health and wellness professional practitioner. I like health and wellness practitioner. It sounds very fancy, but we're competing with marketing. We're competing with the shiny labels and the crash diets and the influencers who are putting out like kind of not necessarily deeply researched information. And that's not to say that there's not people out there who are putting in the time to do the research and putting out the information, but I feel like a lot of times when you're outside of the practitioner space, you can fall victim to the same things that a lot of news headlines fall victim to, and that is a new research data point comes out and they cherry pick out of it to find something that is sensationalized or that can fulfill the argument that they're trying to make. And unfortunately, what that tends to do is oversimplify very complex science. And if you oversimplify things too much, especially when it comes to putting certain things into practice, oftentimes it can lead to the wrong outcome. And, that's been seen numerous times in the past. Again, a larger topic for a different time. But, I didn't want to make this episode super, super long. It was just something that I found very interesting in doing research. I mean, I wasn't really researching for any particular reason other than to find things that people needed to know. So, most people don't wake up one day and decide to prioritize their health. It's usually something starts feeling off first, like, they're a little tired or their sleep is poor or stress starts creeping in or they have weight changes that they can't pinpoint where it's coming from. So like my hope with this podcast is like help people notice those signals earlier and kind of understand what to do before the body gets louder. So just to recap real quick on this episode, we talked about how most people search for symptoms and not necessarily prevention, which is a thing that we can fix. Prevention feels invisible, which is why education is key. Again, the basics, they're not sexy. We're talking about adjusting your sleep windows and like eating whole foods and like it's not exciting. And so that's why it tends to get glossed over pretty easily. Next was wearables and AI are helpful, but the data doesn't equal clarity. And then health and wellness professionals and healthcare professionals, but I can't speak on behalf of healthcare professionals because I am not one. We got to be louder about explaining patterns and actionable steps. We got to make sure that people are going back to the basics so that way when we're applying these more exciting things or these bigger things that people are looking for when they think that they're hiring health coaches, when they get to these things, they're not fighting against what's going on in their biology and in their lifestyles. Foundational lifestyle habits, sleep stress management, movement, and physical activity recovery, they remain critical upstream interventions. I mean, if you look at society as a whole right now, in the United States, because we're not talking globally right now. I haven't done my global research, but we have access to as many health and wellness professionals, healthcare, health food, supplements, all this stuff. We have so much access to it. You would think that our health would be improving as a country, but we have like skyrocketing numbers of obesity and overweight individuals, of type 2 diabetes, of cardiovascular disease, other metabolic conditions. They should be lower, but they're not. And there is definitely something that can be done about it. And that's kind of why I became a health coach. I've noticed also too, that I should caveat by saying a lot of people don't necessarily understand what a health coach is or does. And so it's really important for me to touch on this in general, but in this episode too, and that is health coaches help people by educating them on healthy lifestyle choices, on things that are actually actionable in their lives, on, basic nutrition principles and the importance of physical activity. I really focus on sleep, stress, and recovery because those things are also foundational when it comes to improving your overall health. So I like to think of it like this. I will hold your hand while we work through some stuff and try to figure out how to make things work for you. And then once you feel comfortable enough to go off on your own, then go off on your own. I don't want you to have to rely on me as a health coach for your long-term health. So, yeah, that's the episode. Again, this is an audio only episode. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever the case is, leave it as a comment on the podcast episode, wherever you're listening to it. You can also email me. I'm also on social media platforms. You can find me there. But yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope you're walking away with a little bit more understanding, and maybe like a little bit of an eye-opening thing about, preventative health for your own personal life. So yeah, I guess that's it for today. I hope to see you in the next episode. So until next time.